In this video, I'll be talking about the benefits of having diverse teams and how we should respond as a profession to promote genuine inclusivity towards our colleagues, our juniors, and our patient and client groups. There are so many benefits to having diverse teams. They demonstrate increased creativity due to different backgrounds and representations. They help to call out unconscious bias, and they make better decisions due to these reasons. They have reduced staff turnover, and they contribute to a better representation or a better reputation of the organisation and the profession in general. And the most important things about diverse teams is that they are reflective of the communities that they serve, and that increases service user engagement and it increases outcomes, positive outcomes. Now, one thing that's important to note is that diversity without inclusion is just exclusion. You know, you can have a really diverse team and have people from all sorts of backgrounds and heritages within your team, but actually if you're not actively seeking to meet the needs of those people as individuals, then you're just excluding them. A personal example of this is when I first became a speech and language therapist. I remember all the social events that we would do as a team being highly circulated around going to the pub. Now, as someone who is Black British, but having heritage from both Jamaica and Nigeria, that's just not something that I was used to doing at all. I'd never been to a pub actually before I did my speech and language therapy degree. And it's not to say that I should never be invited to the pub or that social should never be about the pub, but actually, are we thinking as a team of how we can make this more inclusive? Are we doing things that people are used to? Are we doing things that actually some people can't really access? You know, my Muslim colleague, for example, she can't go to the pub because that's not actually allowed in her religion. So just thinking of those little things that you can do to make someone feel more included really has an impact on the inclusivity of your team. Now, I've only given a few examples of why diverse teams are beneficial, but as a reflection point, I want you to think of actually what are the benefits of having diverse teams and how can I make my practice more inclusive towards my colleagues. And now I want to talk a little bit about how we should respond as a profession towards our colleagues who are from BAME backgrounds. So one thing that I spoke about in another video is being aware of your microaggressions, being aware of your unconscious biases and challenging this within yourself. You know, it's not about thinking that because you're a nice person that you don't do these things, because some of these behaviours are ingrained and they're taught and they're learned, you know, without words. We know so much about nonverbal communication, and these kind of things that are unseen go on for a long time without people noticing them. So it's so important to challenge that within yourself. Another thing I would say is don't expect your non-white colleagues to educate you about everything BAME. You need to do your research and you need to work out how you can be a better ally towards your colleagues from BAME backgrounds. Another point I would make is it's important to be aware of what's going on in the communities of your non-white colleagues. There is so much going on in the world and often mainstream media doesn't cover it. But actually, knowing that things are happening in the world to people who look like you can be very triggering. What I would say about that is don't just go in and ask questions about it and talk about it all the time. Ask for permission. Ask, do you want to talk about this? I'm aware that this is going on and I'm here and I hear you and I see you, but actually, do you want to talk about it? Because actually, talking about it can be just as exhausting and just as triggering. I think for a lot of people, 2020 has been the year where the Black Lives Matter movement and a lot of the world's social injustice has been brought to light. And actually, for people of colour, this is not something that's new to us. So, you know, going over it again and again can be quite tiring. So I would just say to ask your colleagues about whether they want to actually open up the floor for conversation about these things. Another thing that's important to do is avoid othering or lumping the experiences of BAME colleagues together. Although we are non-white minorities, we are not all the same. My experience as someone who's Black British will be very different to the experience of a Bengali person, for example, or an Indian person or a Chinese person. There are so many varieties and so many variations, and even my experience as a Black British person with Jamaican and Nigerian heritage will be different from another person who is Black British, Jamaican and Nigerian heritage, because we are individuals. We do not fall under the same bracket, and we do not have all of the same experiences just because we are non-white. It's also important to avoid gaslighting. This is where people make people of colour doubt their own experiences. So saying things like, oh no, racism doesn't exist anymore. Or no, I don't think they were being racist. I think it's just ... You know, call out your colleagues and your patients when you see racial injustice. Don't act like racism doesn't exist, because it does, and it is here in the UK. As I've mentioned before, it's important not to shift the responsibility of social justice to your non-white colleagues. You know, we are all here, we all should be working together, and a good ally does their research and does some of the work themselves. So it's just little things like considering the inclusivity of your team, social events, all of that kind of stuff. So now I'd like to talk about how we respond as a profession towards our junior staff. So as senior staff, what can be done to make our teams more inclusive and more diverse? Ironically, a study carried out in 2006 showed that diversity training is not effective, and that actually affirmative action plans, diversity committees and task force, and diversity managers are the most effective in increasing proportions of minorities within workplaces. This shows that it's actually important to actively seek out diversity and actually champion genuine diversity in order for our teams to become more inclusive and more diverse in the first place. You can't expect it to just happen. We need action. Another important thing for senior members of staff to do is provide a safe space for non-white colleagues to talk about their experiences and to talk about race without fear of defensiveness or gaslighting. It's also important to avoid tokenism when recruiting, but instead actively seek to understand the value of having a diverse team rather than just ticking a box saying, oh yeah, we need a Black girl, yeah, we need a Asian boy, you know, that kind of thing. Avoid tokenism and actually see the value in having that person there in your team. What can they add to your team? Look out for the mental health of your Black, Asian and minority staff members. In a previous video, I spoke about biological weathering and the effects of that. And it's really important to understand that facing microaggressions and, you know, racism on a daily basis can be so draining. So make sure that your staff have access to things like the BAME network and all sorts of mental health support. Have honest conversations. There's a term called protective hesitancy, and this is where managers tend to avoid having difficult conversations with staff from BAME backgrounds in order to protect themselves from looking like they are racist. In turn, what this actually does is increases the amount of disciplinary action that's carried out against staff who are from BAME backgrounds later on down the line, because those earlier honest conversations weren't had. Now, there's actually evidence of this in the NHS Res report from 2019 and earlier years. My biggest piece of advice to senior members of staff who are speech and language therapists is to use your voice to have an impact on the wider community. You have more of a say and more of a standing point when you're speaking with other allied health professionals and within the NHS in general. So use your voice to champion genuine diversity. Lastly, what I'd like to speak about is how we respond as a profession towards our service users. And one thing I would say is it's so important to be aware of your privileges, be aware of intersectionality and the power plays that you might bring to the therapy table. Another really important and very basic point is just ensure that access to your service is equitable. Things like booking interpreters and increasing families' awareness of your role within the MDT is so important and so easy to do. This isn't just about people who speak other languages, but it's also about people from different cultures and backgrounds. You know, really try to spend time understanding what is important to your service users, you know, within their families' culture, within their background and within their religious groups. And one point I cannot stress enough is please avoid assuming what is normal. Avoid subconsciously removing individuality from your patients and your clients in an attempt to be culturally aware. It's very easy to make assumptions, but what you just need to do is ask patients and ask families about their own experiences and their household culture. This can help you to avoid overdiagnosing social communication difficulties just because someone doesn't look like you or speak like you or act like you. And lastly, diversify your resources because representation matters. It really does. As a final reflection point, I would like you to think about the following questions. How diverse are my resources? What kind of social events does my team regularly suggest for the team? Are they inclusive? Is there a culture within my team where my non-white colleagues can confidently speak about their experiences? And is there a culture within the team where anti-racism is everyone's business and where microaggressions and unconscious biases are called out? Thanks for listening.